The fighting game genre is vast. With all sorts of different subgenres and mechanics tied to each one of them that may not be as common in others. 2D fighting games began the genre and have pioneered many of these system mechanics. However, there are timeless, near universal mechanics that practically all 2D fighting games have, and one of them is chip damage. Chip damage is a form of damage a player takes when blocking certain attacks like special moves or supers. In some games, this takes the form of permanent damage that cannot be recovered, as is the case with Granblue Fantasy Versus Rising, while others have chip damage be recoverable like in Dragon Ball FighterZ. The mechanic is one of the first intended ways of discouraging a quote-unquote turtle style of gameplay, where the player just sits back, blocks everything, and does their best to zone out the opponent. Chip damage incentivizes players to challenge the opponent's offense and go on the attack themselves, because if they take too much chip damage, they risk getting too low on their health, or worse, death. Chip kills are the intended resulting death from taking too much chip damage. They serve as a complementary mechanic to overall chip damage, as the threat of death from losing too much health while blocking forces players to take aggressive options to turn the tide in their favor and clinch a win. Not all games have chip kills, like Under Night In-Birth or Dragon Ball FighterZ. Out of those that do, many have surefire ways to negate chip damage, and thus stopping chip kills. These can be tied to a renewable resource, like the barrier gauge in BlazBlue Central Fiction, or that particular game's super meter, like Guilty Gear games. Other games have more timing-based mechanics to mitigate chip damage and avoid chip kills, such as Idle Showdown's Instant Block, or Nitro Plus Blaster's Vanishing Guard. Essentially, chip damage, with chip kills by extension, act as a form of balancing, and the accompanying mechanics serve as ways to let players maneuver chip in skillful ways via execution, resource management, or both. But why is that? Why do so many games tend to have mechanics to mitigate chip damage, and at times, chip kills? Because chip kills are really frustrating, man. Chip damage is a strong mechanic because it allows players to damage their opponent even while they're blocking all your attacks, making it so there's always an incentive to counterattack even when you might have the lead. Yes, chip tends to be small in most games, but even a tiny amount of damage adds up. Chip is a point of frustration and annoyance to players, a necessary evil really. Nobody likes getting chipped, but it's a required mechanic that effectively forces more interactions between players. The reason so many games have supplementary mechanics to deal with chip is so that there is a back and forth between players with regards to offense and defense that rewards both for their smart usage of the game's mechanics. And frankly, chip kills just feel bad when they happen to you. While there are many games with ways to deal with chip damage, and thus chip kills if they have them, there are a surprising amount without truly reliable and consistent ways of stopping chip kills. Here's what you're all actually here for, and what I've really been wanting to say the whole video. But I wanted to give some background information to establish my case. Chip kills, by themselves, are bad game design. Now, before you subject me to X Factor level 3 Gucci Belt Virgil mix, shoot me with 10 billion projectiles, or mash buttons and teleports with X Factor level 3 Strider with Ouroboros install, hear me out. Chip damage is a good mechanic, and chip kills, like I said, are bad only by themselves. What do I mean by this? I believe every fighting game needs a fairly reliable and consistent way to negate chip damage, thus preventing chip kills. Think of stuff like special block types that use a semi-permanent resource or skill-based timing mechanics. BBCF Barrier Block, Unit 2 Shield, Fatal Fury Rev Guard, and Guilty Gear Faultless Defense are mechanics that negate chip damage and sometimes even provide other benefits. These can be used at any time so long as the player has the resource, which isn't one time and isn't hard to build back. They allow the player to react to the situation they are in and defend accordingly. They can even preemptively use it to avoid chip from attacks that deal it at the start of a block string, like neutral skip specials. The other kind of mechanic would be those that negate chip, but require a certain timing, like Fatal Fury's Just Defense, Nitro Plus Blaster's Vanishing Guard, or even UMVC3's Advancing Guard. These mechanics are universal options players can do generally at most points of their defense to negate chip damage and use their other benefits, although some of them may not be as reliable in all situations, such as push blocks in Marvel because of how hectic those games tend to be when it comes to offense. Despite the slightly more difficult implementation of this type of anti-chip tool in your game plan compared to something like a simple resource, such as BBCF's Barrier, this kind of option is relatively consistent, and therefore a reliable answer to the threat of a chip kill if the player keeps it in mind. There's a lot of games out there with loads of bullshit that can sometimes be downright absurd. You can probably think of a million different screwed up scenarios in Marvel 3. Morrigan Astral Vision zoning, weird Hagar cross-ups on incoming, goofy and simple unblockables with assists, level 3 X Factor stuff, you name it. One of the more frustrating aspects is just the sheer number of ways you can die to chip in what might feel like an unavoidable situation. And this doesn't just happen here either, it happens in other games too. Hunter x Hunter, Net Impact, and 2XKO are other notoriously crazy and hectic games with insane stuff going on. I mean, just look at the things Buff Bisky with just a single one of the Net Impact gears can get away with. Or God forbid, Uvogin or Leorio have both level 3 overgear and quick gear active and just armor through nearly everything just to kill you in 3 hits. Even in a game like Granblue Versus, where chip kills are actually tied to the overly specific scenario of being at exactly 1 HP and only happening after you had already gone to 1 HP prior to the current block, you can still get put in situations where you can't do anything to avoid it. While highly specific, the available options in the game don't work to counteract this situation. You can't block, as it will get you chip killed. You can't instant block, because it doesn't negate chip damage. You can't generally use an invulnerable attack, as the opponent is using their own more active DP to deal with you. No dodging either, since, if timed right, the active frames will beat the dodge. Even in this highly regulated chip kill condition, having no reliable option that could have mitigated the situation just feels like there was a missing piece of the game. Okay, so editor Natsu here. While I was recording footage in training mode in Granblue for the last thing I just talked about, those clips about the situation where you just kind of get fucked if you get put in that chip kill range. Regarding the specific example with Percival, where he puts you in chip range and then DPs you, if you're the kind of character that actually has a meterless reversal, like for example Anila, you can DP his DP and it'll clash, meaning you can cancel your DP into ultimate DP and that beats it, right? So I just wanted to put that out there. Like, even in super duper ultra omega specific situations, sometimes you have an answer, but generally speaking, you mostly just don't have an answer. Anyways, that's all I wanted to say. Very big tangent off the way. I'm gonna continue the video now. I want to reiterate that I do not think chip kills are inherently bad, simply that they are a poor mechanic when implemented without a proper balancing act. Ways to generally avoid dying to chip by being skilled enough to properly execute or manage a resource gives players clear-cut answers to a frustrating situation. If they get good enough, they can circumvent the chip kills. If they aren't, they know what they need to work towards in order to minimize the risk of a chip kill in future matches as they continue to improve as a player. I just wish more games included a consistent and reliable way to navigate chip kill scenarios and not have situations where you just get hit with the got him GG's. That's pretty much all I wanted to say. I understand the presence of chip kills can lead to interesting and hype moments both for players and especially spectators. But I believe, if they exist within a game, there should always be a reliable answer to them afforded to the players if they prepare for the possibility of a chip kill.